don't discount the young 21-year-old on the number 8 yellow Ducati, Michael Rutter. Pole position man then, Mark Farmer, will obviously be looking to improve on what was a fairly torrid first race for him, but it's good to see that he's perfectly unaffected physically by that crash when he went onto the grass coming out of Goddard's. They're all away. There's a big wheelie pulled in the middle of the grid somewhere, but everybody sees a massive wheelie from Carl Fogarty. But slotting in front again goes Michael Rutter on the number 8 Ducati. The 21-year-old from Stourbridge has got his nose in front again, and Carl Fogarty is playing to the crowd here. That's sensational stuff. The 955cc Ducati with an immense amount of torque. Roger Burnett alongside me as always, and his heart was in his mouth just then.
I think Fogarty has certainly got a very powerful machine there. Obviously it's lifting the front wheel at the tweak of the throttle. We didn't see that so much in the first leg, and it may be that the first leg's given him chance to readjust things, and the fuel injection on that bike is now working much more efficiently. So let's have a look at them. It's Michael Rutter, number 8, Fogarty 44. They're streaming through there. Plenty of action in this 750cc second leg, but it's Rutter from Fogarty, from Llewellyn. Jim Moody now on bike number 2 coming up there. Jamie Whittam up the inside on bike number 1. Moody's bike bouncing all over the place as they go through these S's. A couple of laps to get the tyres nicely bedded in. They'll start this race on new tyres. Nicely bedded in, settle down, and then heads down for the 15 laps.
I have to qualify that by saying weather permitting, because it's looking very gloomy over certain parts of the circuit here. We cross our fingers and just hope the rain stays away for the duration of this race. Jamie Whittam, number 1, diving through on the inside, not quite. Michael Rutter, number 8, but there's Whittam. The experience of Whittam forcing the youngster a little bit wide as they came out onto the start-finish straight. Fogarty, number 44, still pulling those massive wheelies. But Jim Moody, number 2, on the fire engine red Yamaha, is now in 4th place. Matt Llewellyn, number 6, is tucked in there as well. There's Matt Llewellyn, who's had a brilliant start to his 1994 season. Race leader then, James Whittam from Huddersfield. 27 years of age, the number 1 rider, on target for a full series in World Superbike. We're riding with number 25, Ian Simpson. Roger.
This is the run up to McLean's corner, a very fast left-hand kink here. You see the curb, approach it, braking hard. You see the rev counter there vibrating terribly. There's another Norton just in front of him. Simpson, of course, being on a Norton, and he comes through, and that was to pass Lee Pullen, but Pullen pulled across the front of him, 90 miles an hour, accelerating hard out of here, down onto the straight now. Now we'll see if the Norton is quicker than the Yamaha of Pullen's in front, but no, it's not. Braking hard alongside Pullen now, and he's taken a place, and it's Phil Borley in front of him, his teammate, through the S's, second gear, left and right, currently in 12th place, but now back with the leaders, and that's James Whittam, Fogarty, and now Jim Moody. We didn't see much of Jim Moody in the first leg, but he's really up there in this second leg. He'll be wanting to make amends for a bad start and a poor grid position. In fact, qualified in 15th place due to adverse weather conditions, but charging hard in this one now. Fogarty seems to be riding very confidently, pulling the front wheel up and seems to be playing a little bit, but Whittam very serious, very intent on winning this second leg.
Our third place man, Jim Moody, had to work, as Roger Burnett said, very hard in the first race and finished in 5th place. So number 2 then, Jim Moody, the Glaswegian, sitting in 3rd. Matt Llewellyn is there in 4th, number 6. Then it's Mark Farmer, Moody's teammate, and Michael Rutter has really disappeared down the order to 6th place now because the pace at the front is too hot. So the rundown, James Whittam, number 1, leads. Carl Fogarty, who is an enormous threat, is there with him, number 44. Then it's Jim Moody. Then it's Matt Llewellyn, number 6. Mark Farmer, Michael Rutter, Steve Hislop, number 3. Then it's Ray Stringer, number 5. There's the Norton with the camera on board. Ian Simpson from Dalbeattie. We're riding with him. Ahead of Simpson, James Hayden's in there as well. Phil Borley, the other Norton, also in very, very close company. And it does seem that, of course, a new machine for Ian Simpson, and the riding style for the Norton, required by the Norton, is very different from the conventional motorcycle. It has very little engine braking, and that means when the throttle is closed, it does tend to gallop on at a rate of knots. Number 12, Robert Dunlop, is also there. Robert Dunlop having his first ride in a new team. Number 12, Robert Dunlop, is fighting hard to go past, but Simpson hangs on. So at Goddard, Dunlop on the inside, number 12. So an enormous amount of quality further down this field. Ahead of them is James Hayden, who has graduated from the 250 class and is now in this superbike class. Real strength in depth, Roger.
Back with the leaders now, and it's still Whittam from Fogarty. Jim Moody still hanging in there. I think the threat of rain looks like it may have passed, but of course Fogarty will want to keep as close to James Whittam on bike number 1 as possible. I do believe that Fogarty's riding with a certain amount of additional confidence in this race. I think he's got his bike set better than he had in the first leg. That will have been used as a test bed for him to go forward and to improve his lap times in this second race. And Jim Moody's not being shaken off. Look, Fogarty looked over his shoulder and Jim Moody was there. Matt Llewellyn in the background on bike number 6, bringing up 4th place. But Fogarty, a very experienced rider now. He rode with his head in the first race. He won on the last couple of corners. In fact, I think the 3rd corner from home he took the lead. And won from James Whittam. But the problem for him in this event, this race, could be Jim Moody on bike number 2.
For several seasons now, we've watched Jim Moody progress through the National Road Race season, and last year we had the first glimpse of Jim Moody on a really competitive big machine when he rode the Norton at the tail end of the year and acquitted himself really well. And in his own words, this is the real opportunity he's always wanted, to be part of a highly professional top-class team. Moody is now in the Yamaha team. There is no finer Yamaha in the UK than the one that's under Jim Moody, but I'm puzzled to see when he brakes hard there's a pattering sensation, and that seems to be a problem which has haunted Jim Moody right through his career. We watched on many occasions, particularly at Mallory Park, the front end hopping around when he brakes very hard. Roger, it seems peculiar, and if you watch carefully when he brakes hard, there's a distinctly uneven pattering sensation on the front end.
Yeah, Jim does have that sensation. I must say that his corner speed is very good through the faster corners. This is a very fast corner now, and the riders here apply the power as hard as they can, tucked down behind the bubble for maximum wind resistance. And Fogarty's now in the lead. He's got ahead of Whittam. Moody's still bouncing in the background, and I do see what you mean, Barry. I do take your point. We'll perhaps have a better look at that as we go down into the Melbourne hairpin. It seems to be when Moody brakes very hard, the front end of the bike bounces. You can see it bouncing there, judder, judder, judder. But I do feel that I know what it is. I think he's changing down the gearbox too quickly and actually locking the back wheel, and the back wheel's hopping. Look, the back wheel is hopping. The chain, you can see the flex, the tension on the chain. So that's where the problem is coming from, Barry.
More then to be attributed to Jim Moody's riding style than a mechanical defect. Well, the Yamaha people will be delighted about that, I'm sure. Look at Matt Llewellyn, though, number 6, who's really piling on the coals. Llewellyn on another Ducati finished 6th in the first leg and now is in 4th place and pushing Jim Moody really hard. There's Llewellyn, number 6. And he's had a great start to the season and will go to strength from strength. Matt Llewellyn then, number 6, in 4th place and forcing on. Ducati leads, Carl Fogarty. In 2nd place, Ducati James Whittam. This is the leading duo. Fogarty is on the charge. Fastest lap speaks for itself, but Jamie Whittam would very much like to pull back a win in this, the second leg. A good look over the shoulder from Fogarty to see just where the youngster from Huddersfield is, and he's right there on the back wheel. And
that fastest lap of this race from Fogarty so far is 1 second faster than the previous race today. So they are obviously running quicker. They've got their bikes better set up for the conditions, which is just how we predicted. And we now have 2 Ducati riders here with Fogarty and Whittam trying harder. Look at the left hand, in and out, the left hand goes, operating the clutch. Whittam tries up the inside, but Fogarty says no and closes the door right across the nose of Jamie Whittam. Accelerates hard, now up towards Goddard's. Heavy braking again, down the gearbox. Second gear really for rounding Goddard's here, being careful not to tweak the throttle too much because the back end could step out. Fogarty and Whittam are waving. I don't quite know who they're waving at, but whether they've seen someone that they're attracted to in the grandstand, I don't know. But into Redgate they go. Fogarty and Whittam.
Well, we can see blue skies, so it's looking as though the weather will hold for this race, and it would indeed be a real shame if the rain were to close in and stop what is looking like developing into a very good scrap. The 955cc Ducati, the factory Ducati, ridden by Cole Fogarty, because he is a true works rider. Rain is now falling. There is sleet falling again on a part of the circuit. The riders will come into that, and that's bad news. Might have been what they were signalling at on the previous lap when Roger Burnett pointed out that James Whittam was waving his hand. Top six: Fogarty, Whittam, Moody, Llewellyn, Mark Farmer running well in fifth. So both the Yamahas in the top six. And something is falling. Sleet maybe just about at Redgate. You can see the dark skies ahead of them. Quite a few showers. Everybody's signaling. Whittam is waving. He's saying, I've had enough of this. They've called it a day. The riders have decided that the conditions are too treacherous. Fogarty looks over his shoulder. As soon as we see a red flag, it will become official, but it's looking as though the riders have had enough. Red flag is out. The weather has brought to a close this part of the 750cc race. Fogarty was leading. James Whittam was in second. Jim Moody was in third. Matt Llewellyn was in fourth, and Mark Farmer running very strongly indeed. 7 laps completed, but you can see for yourselves the sleet is now coming down with a vengeance. Yesterday's tricky qualifying threw up some real anomalies, and none greater than number 25 Stephen Farmer, who qualified here in pole position in the adverse conditions. His best result last year, 13th place at Cadwell. Adrian Clark, former motocrosser who revelled in the wet yesterday, he's another surprise front row man. And the first of the favourite men, reigning champion Paul Brown, carrying obviously the number one, had hoped to do a Grand Prix season this year, but was short by about £90,000 of the necessary sponsorship. So Paul Brown, good news for us really, he stays at home. And to complete the front row, number 52 Ian Challoner, who had a season in '93 fraught with mechanical and financial problems, but this team, this year, new team, new bike and new hopes. That's the dash down to Redgate. The wind still gusting here at Donington. The sun's still out, just about. We hope the weather stays fine for this 15-lap 250cc race. And we have a battle royal ahead of us. Nigel Bosworth, third in last year's championship, is languishing down on the 6th row. Ian Newton, 6th in last year's championship, is well down. He had a very unhappy qualifying. And Wolsey Coulter also is on the last but one row. So there are some very quick men well down the field. To remind you then, Stephen Farmer on pole, Adrian Clark, Paul Brown and Ian Challoner, the 4th fastest. Challoner nearest the camera with the new livery on his machine. It'll be interesting to see whether the number 25 pole position man Farmer, who is creeping, but they've managed to pull everybody back. They're all very keen, champing at the bit. They're off. All the 250s safely away. Number one, Paul Brown, a cracking start. Round the outside, looking very hard, was Jason Vincent. And the two Vincent boys, number 12 it is. Jason Vincent, number 12, from Earl Shilton in Leicestershire, just up the road. Both he and his brother Max have had a cracking start to the season. Jason Vincent, a fantastic ride at Mallory Park just 2 weekends ago. And he is the son of former British sidecar road race champion Chris Vincent. So a dynamic start for young Jason Vincent. He came through from the second row, 6th fastest qualifying. Paul Brown, number 1, is stuck there. Steve Sawford is also number 3 in 3rd place. This 250 race looks like being something a bit different, Roger.
It does, and we've got Bosworth making his way through the field. He didn't have a very good qualifying time because of the wet conditions. Most of the riders in this race won't have their bikes set up as they'd like them because the practice was wet, as we've said. But Jason Vincent is making a meal of things, or so to speak. Paul Brown is in 2nd place, and he'll be happy to run. So it's Paul Brown, bike number 1, 2nd. Steve Sawford, number 3, 52. Ian Challoner, 14 is Jamie Robinson, and 25 that went through there with Stephen Farmer, the pole position man. So all feeling their way a little bit at this stage. Let's let them settle in a couple of laps. There's Bosworth. I've spotted Bosworth coming through, and number 5 there was Robert Milton towards the back.
Well, an unbelievably fast start for this young man, number 12, Jason Vincent. His best result was in the last round in the 93 season at Mallory Park when he came in 4th, but he actually finished 13th in the 93 season. There's Bosworth. There's Nigel Bosworth, number 2, who, similarly to Paul Brown, had hoped to be on the Grand Prix scene this year. They were hoping to team up and do a double act in the World Championships, but that effort foundered really through lack of sponsorship. An enormous amount of cash is needed to even begin to think about a World Championship attack, and they decided to call it a day, stay here at home and race in the UK. Number 12, Jason Vincent leading. Paul Brown, 1.87 seconds behind him. Then it's number 3, Steve Sawford. Adrian Clark, number 10, is also pushing very hard, but this is a strung-out 250cc race with Jason Vincent just rocketing away now. Adrian Clark is now slipping down the order. Number 52 shoving through there, Ian Challoner, who was on the front row. So Challoner, number 52. Ahead of him is number 25, the pole position man, Stephen Farmer. So number 25, Stephen Farmer, with Ian Challoner right behind him.
And here's the leader, and the back end snaking there. He applied the front brake really hard, and the back wheel lifted up, but he's got it all under control. He doesn't really need to be trying this hard just yet because he's pulling away from the rest of the pack. At least I make it that way anyway. In these early stages, got a lot of confidence in his tyres very early on. Peeling the bike over into Redgate Corner, 80-85 miles an hour there, accelerating nicely away from Redgate. This is the braking effect, the right hand grabbing the front brake. Watch for it in a second. The rear wheel coming off. Look at the gap between the road and the rear tyre there, bouncing it back down and really trying hard in these early stages.
Very mature and aggressive riding by young Jason Vincent. And we are seeing, I think, a star of the future. He's got the reigning 250cc Supercup champion behind him, who would automatically have qualified for a World Championship place had he been able to raise the necessary finance. Sawford going steadily number 3rd. Then it's Adrian Clark, number 10. And then Stephen Farmer with Ian Challoner right behind him. So Stephen Farmer, number 25, Ian Challoner, number 52. And there you have the top 6. Challoner, I remind you, 4th fastest qualifier with a brand new Yamaha. So that team has got itself in order. Whilst Jason Vincent, number 12, is out in front. The battle for the minor placings, I won't say minor, the top 5 or 6 really hotting up. Adrian Clark, number 10. Just look at them swarming it, and that's Stephen Farmer. I suspect, Roger, that the young man who qualified on pole position is maybe just holding them up a bit.
Well, Stephen will not have much experience here at Donington Park. In fact, it could be his first visit here. His cousin Mark Farmer, who rides the big 750s, will have taught him all that he knows about Donington Park. and he's putting that to good use. But Ian Challoner there on bike 52, he's just been passed, and I think that looks like number 58. That's Craig Ramsey, 58, and he's now charging hard right round the outside of Ian Challoner. Very, very good indeed, but all closely packed, and still no sign of Bosworth.
Ian Challoner now coming under pressure from number 99, Graham Thompson, but we are back with the race leader, who's giving us an absolutely superb display of riding ability round here. His main circuit for testing will be Mallory Park, because this young man lives at Earl Shilton, which is literally 2.5 miles from the Mallory circuit. Third place man, number 3. Adrian Clark, number 10, in 4th. And now we have number 58, that's Greg Ramsey, who's got the better of Stephen Farmer, who's got the better of Ian Challoner. Stephen Farmer, the young Ulsterman, is holding up that tussle for the 6th, 7th and 8th places. Race leader number 12, Jason Vincent, just easing away now, 3.16 seconds the gap. Paul Brown just sitting there. Now this will be something of a surprise, I guess, Roger, for Paul Brown, who wouldn't have reckoned to be headed by someone of Jason Vincent's calibre maybe in this, the first round.
No, but Paul Brown is using a different make of motorcycle to what he used last year. This will be only his second outing on it this season, so still probably a bit of work to do in getting used to the bike, setting it up. And Paul is a perfectionist with the settings on the bike. And because, as I've said, because of the wet practice, he won't have had enough time really to get it dialed in.
Well, look at that. What a demonstration of road racing skill here at Donington from Jason Vincent. Terrific ride from the young man who's got, look at the gap, an enormous gap now, well over 3.5 seconds. A bit of a twitch then, though. There is a possibility that he could get carried away with things, but let's hope not. He's certainly looking good. The Yamaha working well. And another snake. Not looking terribly safe there, Roger, but he's still got that lead. You can see 3.26 seconds. Paul Brown will have seen what was happening and might just now begin to pull him in.
Yes, Vincent actually went very, very wide into McLean's corner on that lap. Made a big mistake going into the corner. He's lost a lot of time. I think you'll see that when we look back that Paul Brown is quite a lot closer than he was the previous lap. If Vincent just keeps his head, which of course he needs to do, then I believe he can win this race. But he's going to be under pressure all the way. And to be fair, you see Paul Brown actually closed up this lap compared to last lap. Steve Sawford on bike number 3 being tailed off somewhat. But young Vincent, he needs to keep his head, but he's not used to being in this kind of position in the lead.
Well into this then, the 250cc Heat Super Cup round 1, Donington Park. And race leader number 12 in your picture now, Jason Vincent from Earl Shilton, who is showing the rest of the 35 strong entry a clean pair of heels, and he has a whole wealth of experience behind him. The man in second place, not immediately behind him, because he isn't immediately, that's the gap you can see, is last year's champion and reigning champion Paul Brown. And in third place, former champion Steve Sawford from Tempsford in Bedfordshire. Fourth place, number 10, Adrian Clark from Heanor in Derby. In fifth place, it's Greg Ramsey, but Greg Ramsey now is coming under pressure from what looks like the number 99 of Graham Thompson. As soon as I get a glimpse of that, I'll let you know, but Thompson was really piling on the coals. Race leader, though, number 12. Jason Vincent. Paul Brown is winding him in. 2.52 seconds the gap is now. There you are. As I say it, it's confirmed. So Brown is on the charge, and it could be that Jason Vincent might just beginning to burn himself.
Although Paul Brown's obviously on the charge, he's wanting to catch him up. You can see the gap there. Paul Brown has the incentive because he's the man in second place. Jason Vincent has all the work to do trying to pull away from Paul Brown, and Jason's inexperienced and he's liable to make a few mistakes. So I think the only ground or inroads that Paul Brown will make into that lead it will be by the mistakes of Jason Vincent.
We will be visiting all the top circuits in the UK for this Heat Supercup series, and the best of the action, and none better here than at Donington, where they're really scrapping out in the 250s. And Jason Vincent, the surprise race leader, has now got a battle on his hands, because this man, Paul Brown, number 1, is beginning to put some pressure on. Still in third place, Steve Sawford, and a lonely ride for Adrian Clark, number 10, in fourth place. And moving up now is Ian Newton. So Ian Newton on the Aprilia, who had a very slow qualifying position. Roger Burnett said to me he had a problem yesterday and almost decided not to start. So Ian Newton, number 6, is now in 5th place and really motoring. The Aprilia, of course, a very fast motorcycle.
And Ian Newton, a very, very good rider, and that's a good combination. He's now up to 5th place, look. This is very outstanding indeed. He qualified on the second to the back row of the grid, on the 8th row in fact, and he must be one of the fastest men on the circuit. In fact, 31st fastest in practice. He didn't like the wet practice. He got water in some of the components on the bike, and in fact this morning it was snowing. I talked to him and he said, I've had enough, I don't think I can be bothered to start the race today in these conditions. But back to the leader, Jason Vincent, doing nothing wrong. He now has extended that lead to 3.5 seconds from Paul Brown. It went down to 2.5 after a mistake, and in fact now it's 4 seconds. So now a 4-second advantage to Jason Vincent over that man, Paul Brown. And this is number 3 on the bike, 3rd in the race, Steve Sawford. 4th place, ex-motocrosser Adrian Clark, looking very good. And there's Ian Newton, and my bet is that Ian Newton can get up to 2nd in this race. That's a big, big feat for him, but I think he can do it.
Number 6 then, Ian Newton, really motoring. There's the race leader, totally unaware of what's happening behind, but also another of the fancied names who qualified in a lowly position. Number 2, Nigel Bosworth, is now in the points in 14th place. So Bosworth too is moving up through the field at a rapid rate of knots. Not nearly as quickly as Newton, though, is in 5th. This is the race leader, Jason Vincent, still number 12. 4.18 seconds ahead of reigning champion Paul Brown. This race is really strung out, but there's a big struggle going on. 3rd place, number 3. And now Newton is with Adrian Clark, number 10. The battle now for 4th place. Ian Newton is in 5th. He's on the inside. He's on a very rapid motorcycle. The number 6 blue Aprilia, the Italian machine. They've been criticised for being a little bit fragile. Maybe not as robust as the Japanese, but they are certainly blisteringly fast. Moving into 4th place then, not quite. We thought he was there, but he wasn't. The camera angle led us to believe that maybe Newton will do it, but it'll be interesting to see when they come onto the straight whether the Aprilia has the speed to go past the number 10 Yamaha. This the battle then for 4th and 5th places. Number 10 Adrian Clark in 4th, Ian Newton number 6, moving out of the slipstream, lining himself up for the passing move. 4th place then, and fighting back Clark, the old motocross experience. You're not coming past that easily, my son. But he's gone wide, and this time, has he? Yes, he has. Oh, it's touch and go, Roger.
It's touch and go, and this argy-bargy is actually holding up Ian Newton. His progress is going to be held up somewhat. It looks like we've got a few spots of rain on the commentary box window here, so that's going to cause problems for these riders who are riding on slick tyres, of course. No tread on their tyres. So slick tyres, a few spots of rain, and I can physically see the riders are actually not riding at 100%. They're slowing down. Ian Newton's looking over his shoulder, and this could result, if the rain's heavy, in actually bringing out of a red flag and the race being run in 2 parts. But we'll have to see on that one.
At the bottom end of the circuit at Redgate, as the riders move up now over the fastest part of the circuit, it's physically, something is falling very heavily, so they will run into that as they complete this lap. They're at the S's though, where it's relatively dry, but the weather is coming from the west, and you can see the dull sky that the riders are approaching. They will come into very adverse conditions indeed once they get to Redgate. The red flag is out, the red flag is out, and the race will be stopped, as Roger Burnett said, and will be rerun as a two-part race, but obviously weather has precluded part one. The 250 race having been stopped due to the adverse conditions, you can still see snow falling here at Donington. The leader having completed 9 laps of the race, the organisers have declared a result. Jason Vincent took the win from Paul Brown. Steve Salford hung on to third. Adrian Clark, Ian Newton was very much on the charge, and Greg Ramsey completed the top 6.